Good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm losing my voice, which is a little bit hectic. But yes, I guess that's what it means when you are from a small town called Dakar and you land in Lagos and get caught in the craziness and the crowd. 3 million inhabitants in Dakar, including the suburbs. And my dear friend BC Silva always say, stop complaining about the crowd in Dakar. That's a neighborhood in Lagos. Anyway, I want to start with a quote that I like very much. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. That's a quote by Malcolm X. And it's something that has been in the back of my mind for the past 3 years that I've used in writings in an exhibition last year. And especially when we think of how we perceive or interact with our leaders, any kind of leaders, moral leaders, political leaders, religious leaders, we're all complaining. And when it comes to Africa, it's almost like a cliche that we don't like our leaders. And sometimes people will say, you get what you chose, you get what you voted for. So now it's something that I was also saying to another dear friend, Karen Melbourne, American, when we're betting who is going to win the elections in America. I won the bet and I got a bottle of champagne that I drank with Misla in Paris. So I also think what comes to my mind about all of this is we can keep on sitting down and complaining, but that's not going to bring us anywhere. And what are we standing for? And personally, as a curator and as a writer, I've been paying a very close attention to artists from different generations, from different parts of the world, who are really taking a stand and putting themselves out there, not just as activists shouting or doing, let's say, crazy art that people will hardly understand, but who have a strong message to say and who are having an impact on the society and planting a seed for the next generation. So I'm very, very honored to be moderating this conversation with these two amazing artists. And without further ado, I will start with Wura. I've asked the two of you to select very specific work that I think can resonate with this conversation, because we have to keep it short, and then we can continue over a drink. Your work as a performance artist, it's also something that is sometimes difficult for people to understand, especially the collectors, because they want something tangible that they can see every day. It's a challenge to do performances and to make it accessible to that group, particular group, I'm quoting you. And I also realized that you've been doing performances indoors, in museums, but also performances outdoor and here in Lagos. What were you trying to say, and why are you doing this? And what's the reaction of the passerby, let's say? So we can start with this first performance that you did several times over the year. You can see it on the screen. Will I still carry water when I'm a dead woman? So can you tell us a little bit about what you were trying to do with this performance?
So is this working? Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. So this was the first performance I did when I came to Nigeria for the first time. Will I still carry water when I'm a dead woman? And it was very much about this immediate and kind of one of the first experiences I had here that really gave me pause, which had to do with gender and the observations of the work that was happening in the household of my cousins where I was staying. And basically, I was thinking a lot about labor, and I was also thinking about the space of imagination and how necessary it is to have time and space to think and imagine. And so with that in mind, I was observing that my female cousins were doing a lot of work, getting up very early and staying up very late and carrying water into the house. And I was helping them with this task, but I also felt like, wow, this is 2011, and am I going to be doing this when I'm dead? Like, what? Why? Will I still be carrying water? And so I basically asked this question that drove the performance, And I tied these water kegs to my leg, and I crawled through this street in Ajigbo, and to really like think about the question and think about it viscerally in my body. So from there, the performances that I do in public space here are about the presence of women and are based on a lot of observations I have about the way women are or aren't listened to, and also about this deep interest I have in freedom and what it feels to be free, what it feels like, and what it feels like for me. There's something about not only being able to speak and being heard, but just the mere act of being able to walk freely down the street without having someone question that in any way. I think your other question has to do with economics, regarding like how do you collect performance art, perhaps? And I mean, I think there's just a very practical answer to that, which has to do with the documentation and the archive, and developing a relationship as a collector to that archive. So there are photographs, there are videos. I make also a lot of performance-based videos, so the video is very important to the physical act. And that's what you can buy if you want to buy that.
Second one, beauty. Still again on women. What was this one about?
This was a piece that I did with 4 other women called Beauty, and it was about, or it sort of began with this question about the relationship of women that women have to each other and to hair and appearance. And a friend of mine who visited from the US, she's an artist and architect, and we were talking about, we were developing a performance together, and we were thinking about this Marina Abramovich performance where she's attached to Ule with, they're attached by the hair, and they stay in a room for, I think it's 16 hours they're attached, and then the final hour of the performance, the 17th hour, they allow the audience in. And so the piece is about endurance, but it's also about the energy from the audience. And but we were really interested in this image of like the connected hair. So we got our hair braided starting at 2, and then we stood in Obalende until 6 o'clock, attached that way. But one thing that was really beautiful about it is that the audiences here are very generous, and it's like the energy of the audience is also helps activate the performance. And there's this very important exchange that happens through the curiosity and the questions, and kind of this human interest in what's happening that's different, and what's happening that's interrupting the space of daily life here.
I'm wondering, because I see more and more female artists addressing issues around women or around the body. I'm going to be the bad cop just to make us a little bit alive before we fall asleep. That's almost a cliche, like women are dealing with women issues. Why are you doing it? What's the reason? When did it start and why?
Well, it started with, I mean, my specific desire to make performance about the presence of women in public space started with that experience at my cousin's house and that observation of labor. But also, for many years now, I've been making work about physicality, about the limits of my own body, about flying. You know, how high can I jump? Can I jump high enough to be able to fly for like a part of a second? And like, what are the limitations of this physicality that I have? And what are the questions that I can answer with that? And I think that being here in Nigeria and living here, this part of my life has really activated that in other ways, in a more public way, because of our public interactions with people and kind of like the choreography of moving through public space. In terms of, I mean, the thing about the cliche is like, I'm making work that's about my experiences and about the way I move through the world, about how people do or don't react to me, or about the exchanges I have. And it happens to be that I'm in this place where women have particular kinds of experiences, and so that's one of the questions that I'm asking.
What about this work?
This work I did last year, and I really like this piece because a lot of the pieces I do are endurance-based, and this one I just wanted to create a work where women could walk freely down the street. And so it's called Strut, and it's just about that feeling of freedom when you're strutting and when you're just happy and you're into your own thing. And so, so basically I created these costumes which could be worn on the head, and they could also become capes, and they could become dresses and skirts, and they had this reflective quality to them. And then they had these masks on to enable this kind of separate space from what's going on the street, and then they just walked through the street from Freedom Park up to TBS, and it was really beautiful because people were very. There was a sense that they were watching these otherworldly beings, and part of the instruction to the performers is, you're walking freely through the streets, you are worldly, and you are also otherworldly. So it's like you have this power to completely come out of your daily experiences and to be in this special free space. And one of the questions that the performers got early on, there was a young boy, and he was just like, "Are you angels?" And then one of the performers said, "Yes." And he says, "Oh." So it's just like this really beautiful thing that people are allowed to enter a space that is outside of what we call the real.
Can you tell us more about the audience reaction if we go back to this one? For instance, do you need an authorization in Lagos to do something in the street? Do people understand that this is an artwork? Is it a statement? What kind of conversations do you have with people passing? What kind of message are you trying to say about being a woman, etc.?
I'm not trying to say anything about being a woman. I'm trying to, my thought process is that I first think about the performers. I'm not thinking about the audience when I create the work. So I'm trying to create an experience for the performers and create an experience that is a way for them through their bodies to answer certain questions. And I talk about what my questions are and sort of how those questions land in public space. And they have to be able to connect with them in some way and know that through this experience they're going to expand or figure something out. So I'm really designing something so that they can have a particular experience that pushes their bodies in the way that I find really exciting about stretching my own. And part of that has to do, I think the pieces that I make in Lagos are very specific to this place because we have these traditions where this makes sense. So we have Egungun, and if you see a masked dancer going through the street, there are certain behaviors. You're not allowed to touch them. You have to stay away. You defer to them. You have respect or fear, or maybe you just don't want them to bother you. So I'm really riffing off of this tradition, which women aren't normally don't participate in, with a few exceptions. They can become part of the secret societies, but I've decided to take that and kind of twist it in a way and think about, okay, I can use this masking to allow us to move through space in a particular way. And then what happens if I develop a costume where you actually see the flesh, whereas in most masquerade you're not seeing flesh. The person is totally masked, and so you have the sense of you're seeing, the spirit is actually entering the space. But what does it mean for a female body to occupy the sacred space, to occupy a space that a spirit and otherworldly being and ancestor might occupy? And through that, there's a lot of negotiation with audience. So it's like I never ask permission because that's causes a whole lot of other problems ahead of time. But there's always negotiation around public space here in Lagos because all public space is contested. And even if someone doesn't own the space, they are the temporary owners of that space, or there's someone above them that wants some kind of transactional. I mean, Lagos is very transactional, so. And that's also kind of exciting to create something where you're putting yourself in space and you're claiming a part of the city for your creative vision because you believe that's important, and you're doing that without actually giving people money. So I think that there's a tension there that's very important and integral to the work that I'm creating.
You don't use the public space, Peju.
No.
No, don't be afraid.
I'm not, I think.
No, I'm losing my voice, but don't be afraid. We've had many conversations over the years. Constitution door.
Yes.
What is this?
I was in the studio. I was working on an exhibition called Testament. And so I got this news, and it was about the Senate meeting. It came up that they were debating what age was the legal age to denounce your citizenship. And it came up that a senator wanted it very well defined that somehow the age of consent had to play in this, where he was going on the debate. He wanted an inclusion in the Constitution that if a female was married, she had become of age. And I remember being in the studio, and I just started crying. I think the guys in the studio were just shocked. They couldn't understand what was going on. And I was just horrified by the news because I knew what kind of setback that would be for an entire country. And just a heartbreak that in the 21st century, there were people who were still selfish enough to think that their religious or personal beliefs or whatever beliefs was more important than the individual choices of every human being or the responsibility that they have to those that were vulnerable. So that was what that was the one piece that I made that had absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the exhibition, but I was so upset. I remember then I was working with Colleen of Art 21, and I really needed to protest. I wanted the whole world to know that this was just wrong, and I was going to write all over my body, and I didn't care, walk down the streets, not because I wanted to perform, but I just wanted it to be known that there is someone here who thinks this is wrong. So we got this idea. Colleen says, okay, we don't want you coming naked to the show. So, but I spoke with my friends as well, and we all decided to wear T-shirts to protest. We got linked with the Child Not Bride organization online, trying to get people to write a petition, people to sign petitions against what was happening, and that was just the genesis. It was this announcement that I heard that just completely broke my heart.
I'm making this quick transition because I know when she was working on this piece that she first went out the streets with T-shirts to protest as a citizen and not saying I'm doing a performance. You in the opposite, you're doing performances, but in a way are questioning many different issues. Do the people get what you're doing? Just, you said like you have the performance with the hair where people then, you can have the conversation. The other procession where the person thinks, oh, are you angels? But the real issues you want to raise about the place of women in public space, the condition of women here in Lagos, do those conversations happen in the public space after your performance or while you're doing the performance?
Well, sometimes the conversations happen. after the performance. I mean, people ask questions during the performance, but it's important to remember, I'm an artist. I'm not a politician, and I'm not a social activist, though I have a very clear and present ethical position about justice and human rights and freedom and equal access. And having said that, I know that one of the most transformational experiences happens in the individual. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in trying to convince 20 million people that the oppression of women is wrong, because that's an impossible task in my mind. As an artist, I can take on the impossible by creating, what I think is very evolutionary and revolutionary, and even more important, evolutionary and expansive, is to bring people together and say, this question, this experience of freedom, you can have it, maybe for the first time in your life, through performance. And there are performers in the room who've had this experience. To have the experience as a woman of walking through the streets and having people move out of your way and have deference and respect for you is something that most of us will never in our lifetimes experience. And the first time I personally experienced it was here in Lagos, and through performance, and that changed my thinking entirely. And so I have a deep belief in that power. I don't believe that representation for me is all that powerful. I think that protest has its limits. I think that being a politician has its limits, but the path I've chosen is very much about the power of transformation that happens here in this thing and in this. And I think it's incredible.
Peju, a lot of your work is about raising awareness about what's happening, and you've been focusing on girls. Again, using your art as that platform to have a conversation with the audience in Lagos, in Nigeria, and beyond. This work was also something very important that you worked on, Missing. What was it about, please?
So again, another reaction. I was, again, in the studio. I'm not allowed to read newspapers because it makes me sick. So for some reason, I don't know, I got a newspaper because we were cutting them up in the studio, and I read one of them. And then I saw that 96 girls had gone missing. And it was right beside stock exchange results or something. And that was it. And nobody was concerned. There was absolutely no... It meant nothing. My response is, as a human being, not just as an artist. There's something Nina Simone says, and it is that it is the job of an artist to reflect its society. Whether you're a writer, whether you're a musician. I say that human beings can be very myopic, but unfortunately we're not myopic enough to be introspective. And many times we're myopic, but we still don't see ourselves. I think it is my job to be able to allow people see themselves. I want to imagine that my work is a mirror and that people can see themselves and their reactions. They become more aware of who they are when they experience my work. And then I was later diagnosed with something called Messiah complex. So I'm the opposite of her. I strongly believe that I can make a change somehow, you know? I believe that But then again, it's a belief, and it's a foolish belief sometimes, because again, it's like making a hole in a river with a fork. Because she's actually very sensible. I am so not sensible. I put myself out there, and I put my work out there, and I throw my voice out there, not caring who listens or who, hoping someone listens, but I just need it to be known. Let it be on record. Let there be some kind of medium that 100 years from now, there will be children who know that 96 girls got missing and nobody cared. There was no response, nothing from the government. There was absolutely nothing. So we started the work, and I started cutting up canvases, and I wanted that record to be there and the world to know that there were 96 girls that got missing in February, until the famous Chibok girls happened. And somehow it became an embarrassment for the government. But nobody ever talks about 96 girls that went missing some months before. And the truth is that girls have been going missing since I was a child. I don't know if anybody remembers the concept of Bomo Bomo. And Bomo Bomo was so as a kid, I remember hearing Bomo Bomo, and I thought it was some...
Senegal, I don't know what it is.
So
Please break it down.
Is like kidnapping kids. So Bomo, sorry, it's like snatching kids. And I remember then, it was a big thing then. So I was born in the 70s. And every mother would tell a child the story about Bomo. It was a conversation you had to have with a kid about strangers, and being careful when you're in school, being careful when you're at home, being careful who you talk to. Everybody was a suspect. So you hear the story of Bomo Bomo, and it's like this phenomenon that absolutely scared you. But if in the 70s, our parents were teaching us about being wary of adults, and then it's still happening now. It's not new then. It's not shocking anyone enough anymore. It's so much part of our lives that we don't care. So 96 girls can go missing, and oh well, they'll be replaced like children and disposable napkins. That's the way it's treated. So this for me was to create a portrait of the missing girls.
And then from the missing girls to the flying girls.
So something amazing happened to me in 2013. Some kids came to my exhibition called Rapture, and I was first of all upset with them because they were like 30 minutes late or something. So I gave them just 5 minutes to talk to me. And then I said I was going to take 3 questions. The first kid asked me, so auntie, why do you ever collaborate with other artists? These are 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, by the way. Do you ever collaborate with other artists? And if you do, what criteria are you looking for in other people to work with? I'm like, oh, you know? They saw the Constitution door, and they wanted to understand what it meant. And I had this conversation with these kids. We had 2 hours conversation. I had this conversation with these kids, and they understood everything I was talking about. I had never had an audience so open and so clear and so engaging and so honest. They were really honest with me. And we talked, and it was just mind-blowing. They were the most intelligent people I had spoken to in such a long time. It was so refreshing. And in the conversation we had, I made them the promise of working for them. And in working for them, they make me tell stories. After this experience, and then I started going to schools to talk to them, I was always being invited to talk to them. And I was inspired to write for them. I wrote this book called Flying Girls, and the protagonist is this young child called Sim. So the second incident that changed my life sort of was going to a friend's house, and she had a 9-year-old housekeeper. And the girl was so short, she had to stand on a stool to wash dishes in the sink. And you all know that it's not It's not a strange phenomenon. Many people have it, they have this thing I'm talking about in their households. You have children who wash your children's clothes and who make your children's food and bathe your children and fetch your water and flush your toilets. This happens. But we don't call it out. So I was with this friend, we went to school together, we're close, we're about the same age. I'm thinking we have exactly the same upbringing. Maybe sometimes I just don't want to engage at all with anything happening, and it's just utterly emotional, and I just spew out my feelings. I remember this piece I did. Okay, so there was this announcement. I really shouldn't listen to the news or read newspapers. So there was this announcement about, so this is a divisive topic here in Nigeria, and it was about jailing or persecuting homosexuals. And in my head, I'm like, it's nobody's business who I'm trying, yes. It's no one's business who I love, right? It's nobody's business who I love. So I ended up making this piece that is this gigantic rainbow. I would say, but that was me. It was this very colorful piece, and it was a spectrum that ran from red to all the way to white, and it was called Coming Together. I didn't tell anyone what the work meant. I'm like, if you're smart, figure it out. Funny enough, the Catholic Church wanted to use it for their campaign. No, for real. I got a call from the office of the, what you call, popism thing. Yes. Castle, so I got this call and they sent me this video of someone interpreting my work about everything that it wasn't. I was horrified. And then, so I said, no, you cannot use it. It was because it was against my own philosophies and my own ideas and what I stood for. And my friend thought I was so stupid because they were going to pay me so much. And I said, we had this argument back and forth. So that is me giving myself. It wasn't a political agenda. It wasn't anything. For me, you know, when people wonder why is the rainbow the symbol for gay pride or whatever label you want to put there, for me that was my own answer.